What's up everyone, this is Emilio with Quick Property Solutions, and in this video today I'm in downtown Detroit. I just got out of a meeting with an investor from Canada, and we were going over some, we were just having a conversation about investing in Detroit. And what I thought was, there's some things that I wanted to talk about from the meeting, and the one thing that I want to talk about is the one thing that everyone always asks. It's the number one question is, where should I buy in Detroit? And the tricky thing about telling you where to buy in Detroit is there's a lot of things that I need to know about your investing in Detroit. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that I always ask when people say, where should I buy in Detroit? I can't just say, oh, buy in this neighborhood or buy here, buy there. I could tell you some of the top neighborhoods to buy, like Bagley, LaSalle Gardens, New Center, things like that. But the problem is I always ask people more questions about their investing because it's such a broad question to ask. So usually what I ask is, what is your intention? Like, what's your investing strategy? Are you trying to do fix and flip, or are you trying to buy rentals? That's the first thing I always ask. The second thing I always ask is, if you're buying rentals, do you want to buy it vacant, or do you want to buy tenant occupied with somebody in there? That's another thing to think about when you're buying rentals. I also like to ask, what is your financing strategy? So if you're looking at deals, are you going to pay all cash, or are you going to get financing through a bank? And the reason I ask that is because if you're buying cash, the important thing to remember is that if you're buying cash, you don't need someone else's money. You're just buying with your own money. So you could buy in areas where the houses are only worth $40,000, $50,000, and you could get a high rate of return. However, if you're doing lending, you're going to get a loan from a bank. That bank is going to do an appraisal on the property, and if you're trying to purchase from a bank, there's a minimum to there's a minimum to the loan that they're being willing to give you. So if you're looking in an area where the houses are all selling for $40,000, $50,000, a bank is not going to finance a 30-year mortgage on an area where all the houses are selling for $50,000. From what I've seen, most of the banks out there, they want to lend on properties that are at least a minimum of $75,000. And even if the houses in the area are selling for $75,000, most banks are just we'll lend it, but how much money? Banks make money from the loans they give. How much money are they going to make off a house that's only worth $75,000? So it's important to think. That's an important thing to think about. So a lot of times when I tell people, look, if you're trying to get financing on this, you want to do the Burr method, or if you want to flip, you're trying to sell to an end buyer after fixing it up, I always tell people, the way that I look at a lot of the areas, I use Redfin and Zillow, and then you're going to click on the sold comparables in the neighborhood. What I do is, you want to scooch that price filter from there's no minimum, scooch it to 100,000, maybe even 150,000. And the reason why you want to do that is because you don't want to buy in areas that they're not worth anything, I don't want to say they're not worth anything, but they're below the minimums of what a bank is willing to lend to you. So that's an important thing, because if you are going to be flipping a property, and at the end of the day the house is only worth $75,000 after you put all this work into it, your end buyer, who's going to be buying your rehabbed property, has to get a mortgage from a bank. So if they're getting a mortgage from the bank, there's going to be minimums to that lender. So to be safe, you're going to want to at least aim for places where the ARV, or after repair value, or the value of that house is worth at least $100,000 or $150,000. If the minimum is 75, then you know what, you could get by with it. But like I said, most banks, they don't get excited when they see a mortgage for a $75,000 house. One thing to think of is, if you are flipping it, look at this alleyway. Let's walk down this alleyway. If you're flipping it to an end buyer, there are two kind of mortgages. Well, not two kind of mortgages, I guess. Two types. There's your conventional mortgage. So a conventional mortgage is, you're gonna get a 30-year mortgage, and they got great credit, and they're really easy to close. Like, they're a very lendable client. So let's say the house is worth $100,000 and the LTV or loan to value is 30%. So they're gonna need, let's say, $30,000 to buy that house that's worth $100,000. But if you're selling to other people that, let's say they're getting an FHA loan. So an FHA loan, they're getting a 30-year mortgage, but FHA, it's a federally backed mortgage. So the deposit for those isn't 30%, it's more like 3 to 5%. So if you're selling a house that's $100,000, they don't need $30,000. They only need like $3,000 to $5,000 down to buy that house. Their LTV is like 95 to like 97%. That's how much the bank is willing to lend them because it's backed by the government. So if you think about it, let's say you have a house that's worth $100,000. If you sell it for $120,000, is it really much more like deposit for the end buyer to give if you raise the price by like $10,000, $15,000? So if you're flipping houses, just want to give you a heads up, like that's how some people are going to buy. Most of the time when I got offers on some of the houses that we were flipping in Detroit, most of them were like FHA. All right, so we talked about if you're a buyer, if you were purchasing, oh cool, look at all this Halloween stuff right here. Sorry about that. So we talked about if you were buying a flip or if you're buying a rental. We talked about buying cash or if you're financing the property. The third thing I wanted to talk about was how are you calculating your offer, or how do you know what your profit is? You just don't want to see a house and say, hey, I like that house, I'm gonna buy it, I'm gonna flip it. This isn't HGTV, all right? You guys have to have a formula for understanding how much you're gonna make, what is the highest you'd be willing to pay for a house. So I was talking to an investor a couple days ago and they were interested in flipping in Detroit, and then I said, okay, so what formula are you using to run your numbers? And they were like, well, I don't really have one. So I briefly talked about something called the Mayo Formula. There are several kind of ways to determine what kind of like if this is a good deal or not, but the formula that I like to use for fix and flipping, it's called Mayo, M-A-O, which is maximum allowable offer. So a maximum allowable offer, you get to find out what you get to determine how much you want to make, and you get to determine the most you'd be willing to pay for a property. So I'll try and make it as quickly and as easy to understand as possible. So the Mayo formula is simply the ARV times 70% minus your rehab costs equals your MAO, which is maximum allowable offer, which is the highest you'd be willing to pay for a property. So let's break that down, okay? So ARV means after repair value. That means when the house is all fixed up, like updated kitchen, updated bathroom, new windows, new roof, what is that value? So the way to determine that is you have to look up your comparables, or short, your comps. So how do you determine your comparables? You either could work with an agent and they could give you a report on determining what has sold in that neighborhood, or if you're cheap like me, you could use Redfin or Zillow. So Redfin or Zillow, they're completely free. So I do have a video of how to do that in my Detroit real estate investing course. So if you are interested in learning more about investing in Detroit or real estate in general, I do have a Detroit real estate investing course link in the description below. Hopefully that provides a lot of value for you. It's supportive to the channel, and it's good education for you if you're learning how to do this. So ARV, go on Redfin, go on Zillow, click on the sold feature. On the sold, it'll say for sale, and then it'll say sold. You want to click on the sold, find out what has sold in the last 3 months in the area, and then you want to find properties that are very similar. So if you're looking at a 3-bedroom bungalow, you can't use comps of a 4-bedroom colonial that's 500 square feet larger. You want to find properties that are very similar to it, that have been fixed up and repaired just like how you're going to do to that house. You want to find out and try and get 3 comparables and find out the average price. So let's say you're looking at a house, and in the neighborhood, one sold for 160, one sold for 140, one sold for 150, and all of them had updated bathrooms, updated kitchens, and they were updated and renovated. You want to use that, which is your ARV, times 70%. 70% is a fluctuating number. It could be 75%, 65%, depending on your profit margin and how much you want to make. But 70% is the industry standard. And the reason why it's 70% is because 100% minus 70% is 30%. So on average, like the industry average is people want to make 20% on the profit on their flip. So if a house, the ARV is, let's say 150, they want to make 20% of that, which is 30 grand. So the other, so 70, so 100% minus the 70% of the Mayo is 30%. So you want to make 20% of that, and what's left is 10%. So what's the 10%? When you sell the property, you have to list it on the MLS. So you have to pay agency fees, you have to pay broker compliance, you have to pay closing costs. There's other fees involved. But at the end of the day, in the state of Michigan, realtor fees for buyer and seller is about 6%. Your closing costs are going to be about 2%. That's 8%. And then there's 2% in there for like other fees and miscellaneous things and things like that. So that's your ARV times 70% minus your rehab costs. Now, what are your rehab costs? So I always tell people, when you're rehabbing, think of it on, there's 3 kinds of rehabs. And remember, this is a spectrum, you know, it can fluctuate. But minor cosmetic, which is like paint and carpet, you leave the kitchen and bathroom alone, but it's just like, you know, you're in and you're out, and you just spruce the place up and you make it look nice. That's gonna be about, like, let's say $20 a square foot. If you're doing an average rehab, you're gonna be doing paint and carpet, but you're gonna get a new bathroom, you're gonna get a new kitchen. So that's gonna be about $35 a square foot. And then you have your full renovation. Your full renovation is paint, carpet, kitchen, new bathroom, you got new windows, you're gonna be updating the plumbing, you'll be updating the electrical. That's $50 plus. So again, it depends on what you wanna do with the property. So average renovations, I say it's $35 a square foot, but what if you wanna get all new windows? Well, that's gonna make the price per square feet go up higher. But let's just say on average, you're like, for a regular renovation, it's gonna be about $35 a square foot or more, again, depending on what you want. Do you wanna have quartz countertops? Do you wanna have granite countertops? Do you just wanna, you know, paint the cabinets? Or do you wanna remove the cabinets and buy all new cabinets? Again, it all depends on what you wanna do with the house. And then ARV times 70% minus renovation costs equals your maximum allowable offer. So that number that you come up with, that is the highest that you'd be willing to go to be able to make your 20%. So the reason why on a spiel with that, and unfortunately I don't have any exact numbers for this example, but the reason why I say that is because if you're going to be rehabbing a house in Detroit, you should be running numbers. You should have a formula as to know what's the most you'd be willing to pay, and how much is that house worth exactly at the end of the day. And the reason is because some people just, let's say for auctions, people just go to an auction and they say, I'm not spending more than this, and then the auction, the prices go higher and higher and higher, and they might be caught up in emotions and say, oh, I want to win this house, so they keep going higher. But they don't understand the higher they're paying, the less they're going to be making when they flip that house, because you're going over your budget. So just remember to understand your formulas for flipping. And yeah, that's all I can think of for this video for now. I know it kind of was all over the place, but like, again, I'm downtown right now. Matter of fact, look at this building right here. I'm downtown right now, so I wanted to start shooting some videos because it's a beautiful day. I think this is Hudson Tower, actually. I think this is Hudson Tower. This is the new tower that's being built right now. Let me see if I can hit my car. Yeah, see, they're still completing up there. Anyways, I'm like literally in the middle of the street, like walking, hit my car. But anyways, yeah, sorry this video is all over the place, but hopefully you got some value out of it. And again, if you guys like this channel, if you want me to talk about something specific, message me in the comments. If you want to reach out to me, there's a link in the description below. If you bought a property here and you want someone to renovate it, we do renovations as well. So reach out to me, message me. You know, I want to talk to you guys. All right, thank you very much. Talk to you soon.